talk a bit more about Storm Bert and whether it is fair to blame climate change for what's happened. 0207 862 2222 is the number. Describing the flooding in Wales as absolutely devastating, the country's First Minister Eluned said hundreds of millions of pounds would be put into flood defences over the past few years, had been put into them. But she said climate change would clearly impact resilience to storms. She said there'll come a point when it will be too difficult for us to protect every home in the country. So it's not so much that this kind of thing has never happened before. It is the regularity with which we are finding we get shocking storms. And yeah, particularly because we're looking at water flooding and we know that our rivers are not clean and the sea is not clean, and it's shocking. Do you think it is climate change?
Yes, and I'll tell you why I know it's climate change. I'm going to try to explain something that is often used to ridicule people who talk about the climate crisis in the way that I do. I'm an environmental journalist, this is what I do, and so I'm going to try and explain. The irregularities are becoming regular. We're getting more used to extreme weather events. We're also becoming more used to things like more hot days in the summer and more really cold days.
Yeah.
So when we realise that this pattern is happening again and again, this is the climate changing.
Do you agree with that, Andrea, or not?
No, I don't. I mean, in the early 1900s, wasn't it, and the 20s and 30s, there was lots of incidents. I mean, we had one in the Thames, didn't we? 1928, and 4,000 homes were affected.
People skated on the Thames in, I think, 1914. So it was so frozen you could skate on it. Now, that may or may not mean, I don't know.
My only point, Andrea, this is really important, is we are experiencing the climate change in our way in the UK. In California, they're experiencing it in their way. And in the Philippines, 4 typhoons, 10 days. It's unheard of. It's never before even been recorded in human history. So the issue isn't that there was once snow in the Thames or ice in wherever. The issue is that those things are happening all at once, all over the planet.
Okay.
But look at China. What was it, early 1930s or something? They had estimated between 1 and 4 million people killed with floods there. So I don't believe this whole net zero agenda. I think it's a way to tax people. And yeah, I don't believe this. I think I care more about a government being better prepared for it. I mean, I know in 2020, what was it, Rishi put several £billion into our flood defences. But I think it's the preparedness of governments which need to obviously be invested in, especially with flooding. Yeah.
Let me try again, Andrea. I'm going to try again with you because I think I can get somewhere.
You won't convert
I'm going to try again.
Yes.
The Atlantic Oceanic Current is one of the most important things to us here in Britain. It's how we essentially get our cold weather.
The Gulf Stream.
Correct. The Gulf Stream is they work in tandem.
I know if it flips, we basically become Alaska.
Well, it's on the verge of collapse. So we know that it's getting to such a tipping point that soon it will no longer be able to sustain itself. Do you know what will happen when the oceanic current collapses? It will mean that we have freezing, unbelievably cold,
we become
wet.
Canadian.
Essentially, the Gulf Stream that holds up that weather will fall down.
Nothing to do with climate change.
Of course, it's got something to do with climate change. Yes, because the oceans are warming up faster than the air.
But what degrees is it warming up?
Quite a lot.
And
Andrea,
is it really actually? I just don't believe it.
No, I mean, but in the end, there is science.
Really
isn't
don't believe it.
You know, we don't. I think we don't have a choice whether we believe science, right?
No, but there's also. I mean, look, I'm a unpaid director of Net Zero Watch, where we challenge the net zero consensus, because that's important. Because I mean, every political party's got a homogenised view of the 3 main political parties, and you've got to be having people challenging it to get
question.
lower prices for
not
the
so much.
consumer.
Yeah. I mean, and also the most powerful man in the world, about to be in January, disagrees with you.
Oh, no,
when Trump was on tour in the election, he said it's cold today.
Yeah.
And they talk about global warming.
We're sacrificing our futures for the sake of having essentially tidbits.
There's lots of
If
scientists out there.
If the US isn't doing it, why should we?
We've got loads of researchers and scientists, who support Net Zero Watch. But the thing is, these don't get into the mainstream media.
Okay, all right.
So are you saying,
hang on. Nelufar, just let me go to a call. Nelufar, let me go to a call.
I don't believe in this Net Zero Watch.
Okay, no. Simon Veld, good morning. Hello.
Yes, good morning.
But this is the key issue here, is whether we look at what's happening in Pontypridd and we say, that is global warming right there.
I asked a eminent scientist some time ago on global warming. And I said, look, is this whatever? And he said, what we know is temperatures are going up and carbon dioxide is going up. Then you have to do your research on that. But we have to. Yeah, sorry. We have to deal with it, but we also have to deal with preparing for these things, because you can't just stop one without stopping the other. In Pontypridd, what they were repairing from the last time it flooded, I can remember when it first really flooded many decades ago, and having to deal with that, is all of that's just been washed away. The new bridge, which they were replacing from the last.
So interesting that the flood defences broke down. Yeah. So I mean, it may be, Nelufar, we have to accept that we can't live in some places anymore, and Pontypridd might be one of them.
It's a terrible idea to build a house in the Sahara Desert and the Arctic and the Antarctic and the green, the ice sheets of Canada. Terrible idea. I wouldn't advise it. And as the climate crisis progresses, there are going to be places that are going to be completely uninhabitable. What I'm trying to say is so for example, Jeremy, you and I both know that the island of Tuvalu is going to be uninhabitable in our lifetimes. We have to make sure that the island of Great Britain isn't going to be uninhabitable in 25 years.
Yeah, well, this is what it's all about. Can we change it? Can we stop this storm by not doing this and not doing that?
Yes.
Let's talk a bit more about whether it's fair to blame climate change for Storm Bert. 0207 862 2222. Got a bit of disagreement here. Claire in Somerset, do you think it's climate change?
Hello, yes, I do, but I think there's some immediate things that can be done now. For example, planting more trees higher up to retain the water, for farmers to not plough right up to the edge along roadsides and hedges, and developers not to rip out hedges and trees. This would all help stop all the water immediately flooding onto the roads.
Yeah, because once the river bursts its banks, you've got to have something to soak it up on the way, and it just runs straight off, it seems.
Yes, or off the field. Off the field, straight onto the road.
Is there something, do we need fewer roads, I wonder, Andrea, where, because roads are the perfect vehicle for water?
No,
grass some of these roads over.
I don't think we need fewer roads. I think we need more, because of people in these, like the countryside, feel quite isolated and they want to get into the main towns, etc., and to help with work, etc. But I do agree with what the lady Claire said there about we need to build more trees and actually look at natural ways to build up the flood defences.
You can't build trees if you're going to pave over it to make roads. I think the issue is that we have cities that are not designed to withstand. Yeah. Okay, so the concrete that we pave our streets with, the tarmac that we tarmac our roads with, essentially they become riverbeds. And when rain falls in this amount and when flood defences break, Claire, what sensible, brilliant ideas that you've thrown in there. I want to make one more. I want to add to yours. It's really important to change our cities in order to make them more resilient. If water can't go down into the soil or into the ground, it is going to go through your house. The forces that we're talking about can't be stopped, and the damage is everlasting. So it's no good just to...
But those practical things, I think it makes sense.
We'll stop people parking in their front yard. There's one. You say you cannot park in your front yard anymore. You have to have grass in your front garden and park on the road. How about that?
It's no one person's responsibility to kind of fix this problem. It's got to be something we do as a nation.
That's your whole argument.
It's got to be... No, it can't just be
it doesn't matter what we do.
Backyard. The rain's not going to go around where you've got a grass patch. The point is
I can do whatever I want.
There are technologies. For example, there are ways to build pavements where you've got patches of grass around concrete. And there are things we can do. There is technology out there. There is infrastructure out there that we can be using right now to transform the cities that we live in. We could be doing it now. We are not doing it now.
Shelley in Newcastle, hi.
Hi, I've got a couple of points. If it is climate change, we're not going to stop it because it's happening now. Through time, when I was little, there's been through the years, there's been the big freeze, great floods, etc., etc. And can I just say this COP? It's a big cop out in the end. I was reading, China is classed as a developing country, so they don't have to pay a single penny to this.
Yeah, I think they weren't there. America wasn't there.
Our little country, we get hardly anything, 0 point something of the world's atmosphere from our little country, and we're doing well.
1%.
And we're getting taxed to the hilt through this for climate. And I think him that's in charge, what's he called, is a nutter.
Who are our Prime Minister?
This carbon capture, what a waste of money.
Oh, Ed Miliband.
Yes, he's a nutter.
Is he?
Shelley, will you go into politics? You're brilliant, by the way.
No, but he's not a nutter. I mean, look, if we carry on as we are, we're sunk, aren't we? I mean, we've lost 70% of the vertebrates since 1970. In other words, any animal with a backbone. I'm not talking about amoeba. When you drive now, you don't have flies stuck on your windshield anymore. I'm starting to worry. You're not worried?
No, I'm not.
We've just got cats and dogs.
Yeah.
We're losing the animals. Thanks, Shelley. I don't know, maybe, but the issue is this. Was it human-made? There's always going to be a tussle on that. And if it was human-made, what can we here do to reverse it? And also the other blow to your side, Nelufar, is that whatever the science is on your side for sure, but Trump isn't. Yes. America is 15% of the world's pollution. And 1% of the world's population.
I agree with you. The climate crisis is not an environmental crisis, it's a political one. COP being a cop-out is a very important point.
Was it a cop-out?
It was a cop-out.
I thought all the rich countries ended up paying.
1.3 trillion was what was asked, 300 million was what was given. I mean, the disparity between that is unfathomable to us. So here's the thing. Shelley mentioned, for example...
We've got a call here, so quickly, yeah.
Shelley mentioned, for example, that we don't produce as much as the CO2, so why should we pay up for it? The continent of Africa produces 3%, and it will have to bear the brunt as well. The climate crisis isn't fair on who it attacks and who it spares.
Okay. Stephen in Herefordshire, do you think this is climate change?
No, it's a combination of a lot of things. If you go back, I'm 74, and I can remember when the Amazon was being cut up and chopped down. You've got a lot of deforestation going on abroad, and a lot of our weather is made and comes from that direction.
Fair enough, yeah. Yeah,
and I can remember they built I can't remember how many 100 houses down in Monmouth, and all the locals told them not to build on the field, and what happened the first winter they had with a lot of rain, they all flooded.
Yeah, I can believe it. And I know there were terrible floods in the 50s where people died. And so, yeah, I mean, there's just more of it. As Nelufar says, there's no question, there's more of it going on. More once-in-a-century things happening, in a way, once in a year. Thank you, Stephen. We'll ask...